I'd like to ask some questions using the power of suggestion. I draw confession from your hearts using psychological arts. Divide and conquer, that's my way. Work on hunch and hearsay. Work on hunch, hearsay. When you're at the height of smugness, I'll inform you of the girl's death. I'll stress the pain she suffered. Watch you close and see if you're bothered. A line of inquiry at a time. See who's guilty of the crime. See who's guilty. You'll never know where I come from. You'll just focus on my function. Even though you're not part of the play, my message applies to you today. First I question Mr. Berling, all parts of my strategic planning. Bring down the most senior man, this upsets the rest of the clan. Make him square, make him mad. He won't admit that he's done bad. He won't admit that he's done bad. Next I turn on the most fragile. Sheila's turn to be put on trial. She breaks down amidst her guilt. From her tears moral fibre is built. Stronger now than before. You help me to win this war. You help me to win. You'll never know where I come from. You'll just focus on my function. Even though you're not part of the play, my message applies to you today. Now it's Gerald's turn to confess. Claims he saw Daisy in distress. At the end of his sad story, I read out her diary. Use this as proof to show him up, rubbing the pain of their breakup, rubbing the pain of their breakup. Then I turn on Mrs. Berling, pride and conceit are her failing. At first I let her rant and rave, then I lead her to her social grave, hoisted by her own petard. Guilty son, her reward. Guilty son. You'll never know where I come from. You're just focused on my function. Even though you're not part of the play, my message applies to you today. Worst person to last. Eric has to admit what has passed. Like his sister, Eric rises, agrees with me there must be changes as things start to fall apart. Make one last speech and depart. Make one last speech, depart. Oh, observe and learn, we are all entwined. Oh, observe and learn to save mankind. Oh, observe and learn, we are all entwined. Oh, observe and learn to save mankind.
Key points. The inspector. It is interesting to note that the inspector arrives at exactly the point when Mr. Berling is preaching to his son and Gerald. There are many theories as to the nature of the inspector. His name, Ghoul, seems to suggest that he is supernatural. It has also been suggested that he is a time traveller, and another theory is that he is the embodiment of social conscience. The inspector is described as having the uncanny habit of staring at a person before he talks to them. He is characterised by purposefulness. He is never swayed from his investigations, despite hostility and evasion by the other characters. The inspector is careful to separate each character from the security of the family when he questions them. This makes them more vulnerable. Despite questioning each character in turn, the inspector is always careful to ensure that the revelations are witnessed by other members of the family and never just by himself. The inspector uses photos to heighten the emotional intensity of his investigations. The photos also serve as a source of stimulus for the confessions. The inspector's lines are often quite short and take the form of prompts that nudge the other characters to continue with their confessions. The inspector repeats the idea that the girl in question died in agony. This again intensifies the character's emotional reactions to the situation. The inspector can be subtle, as when he's dealing with Sheila. Here, he merely has to suggest some facts surrounding Eva Smith before Sheila pours out the entire story in great detail. He has a big impact on Sheila, and she is quick to understand his message. In doing so, she becomes his deputy and supports his investigations during the remainder of the play. He can also be forceful and harsh, suggesting the worst attributes about the characters' personalities. For instance, he suggests that Sheila was jealous of Eva, to which Sheila agrees. The inspector is impervious to any social boasts that the Burlings or Gerald can make. He is not impressed by titles or money. The inspector skillfully uses a certain amount of aggression to deal with both Mr. and Mrs. Burling, raising his voice at key moments, and yet he always remains in control, never losing his temper. The inspector uses questions to ensure that the others do not dry up in the middle of their confessions. He uses psychological manipulation to extract a confession from everyone. The inspector's final speech is impressive and powerful. His exit at this point leaves the family in disarray and ready to turn on each other.
The Inspector. Number 1. What is the symbolism of Inspector Gould's title and name? Number 2. Is the inspector a real policeman who makes a few lucky guesses, or does he symbolise something more? Number 3. What effect does it have when the inspector stares at the other characters before talking to them? Number 4. How does the inspector react to the hostility that he encounters at the Burlings' house? Number 5. Why does Gould isolate each character from the others during his investigation? Number 6. Why does Gould always ensure that he has a witness when characters confess? Number 7. How does Gould make use of photographs during his investigation? Number 8. Why does Gould tend to have short lines, apart from his big speech at the end? Number 9. Why does Gould keep repeating that the girl died in agony? Number 10. How does Gould react to Mr. and Mrs. Burling when they try and show him that they are powerful people? Number 11. How does Gould use aggression to achieve his aims of getting people to confess? Number 12. What action does Gould take if it looks like a character's confession is about to stall? Number 13. How would you describe Gould's longer speeches? And number 14. Why does Gould leave the house after he's heard all the confessions?